On paper, Ottawa seems like the perfect move. It's a capital city with government jobs, safe neighborhoods, and houses you can actually afford compared to places like Toronto and Vancouver. Every year, thousands of people make this move thinking they've found that sweet spot. But a lot of people who move here end up quietly second guessing themselves after it's too late for them to change their mind and they already have the keys. Not because Ottawa's a bad city, it's definitely not, but because nobody told them what daily life here actually feels like once you're past that relocation honeymoon phase. There's definitely a gap between Ottawa on paper and what Ottawa actually feels like on a freezing cold Tuesday in February. And that's where the regrets can start to creep in if you're not careful. So here are the biggest reasons people regret their move to Ottawa and how you can avoid this happening to you. We'll start with the one that sounds obvious but hits much harder than a lot of people expect, and that's the weather. Ottawa gets cold, and that's not a surprise. The surprise is how long that cold can last and what it actually does to your daily life. We're talking minus 25, minus 30 with the wind chill for weeks at a stretch. Your car won't start, your face hurts if you're walking to the bus, and you're layering up just to take your garbage out or walk across the street. But it's not just the deep freeze. Ottawa's winters are long, like November to April. By March, you'll see people celebrating like 2 or 3 degrees like it's a beach day, and they're not joking. And the summers are kind of the flip side, like the other extreme. Ottawa gets humid, 35 plus with the humidex, and the air feels extremely thick and heavy in a way that's hard to describe if you're not used to it. So if you're coming from somewhere out west, like BC, Alberta, expecting that same dry heat, the humidity alone is a rude awakening. The people who are able to handle Ottawa's weather the best, especially the winters, aren't the ones who are able to tough it out and white knuckle it the longest. They're the ones who know what they're getting into and build their life around the winter. Things like skating on the canal, cross-country skiing in nearby Gatineau Park, or getting into sports like hockey. If you don't have a winter plan, the season will wear you down by year 1 or 2 because the season is so long. The next issue, and I feel bad leaning into a stereotype here, but Ottawa can feel boring depending on what you're used to. I know that sounds harsh, but hear me out here. Ottawa has great restaurants, festivals, museums, lots of green space, but the energy of the city is quite different from what people expect sometimes, especially if you're coming from an urban center like Toronto or Montreal. Ottawa is a government town at its core, and that shapes the culture more than many people realize before they've arrived here and started living it. The nightlife tends to shut down a little bit early. The restaurant scene is good, but it's not that deep. Like, you'll cycle through a lot of the best restaurants faster than you would in a larger place like Montreal or Toronto. And Montreal is only about 90 minutes away from Ottawa, and many people here use it as an escape valve if they're looking for a more lively scene, and that tells you something about the city here. Now, the flip side of this, and this definitely matters, is Ottawa is a great place to raise a family. It's safe, it's clean, the Byward Market could use some work, but overall very safe, great schools, tons of outdoor access, and the people who love Ottawa tend to be in a stage of life where they value stability over late nights. If you're 25 and coming from downtown Toronto expecting that same social energy, you're going to feel the difference, and probably not in a good way. The next thing to consider is that Ottawa is massive geographically. It's one of the largest cities by area in the entire country, and the neighborhoods are wildly different from each other. People pick based on the price or the commute time and end up somewhere that doesn't fit their life if they're not careful. For a few examples, Barrhaven is affordable and family-friendly with a fair amount of newer builds, but it's 30 or 40 minutes to get downtown, and honestly, everything feels kind of the same, and there's no rapid transit until the LRT extension eventually arrives, whenever that's going to be. Canada has good schools, proximity to the tech sector, but it's almost its own city out in the West End, along with Stittsville. You can go weeks without crossing the Queensway into central Ottawa itself. Then you've got neighborhoods closer to downtown like the Glebe and Westboro, which are very walkable, trendy. There's a great community feel, but a detached home in those places is often well over $1 million, and you're going to be competing with every other person who wants that lifestyle, that kind of best of both worlds. Orleans is more affordable and it has a solid community infrastructure, but it's far from downtown to the East End and has a kind of distinct French Ontario flavor that either clicks with you or it doesn't. Picking the wrong neighborhood in Ottawa isn't just an inconvenience or an extra 5 or 10 minutes driving, it shapes your entire experience of the city. If you're thinking about Ottawa, make sure you understand or talk to somebody who understands the distinct neighborhoods so you can move somewhere that doesn't just fit your budget, but also the lifestyle that you're looking for. The next thing to consider is the transit, the light rail, and just generally getting around in Ottawa. Ottawa's light rail system, or the LRT, was supposed to be transformational, and when it works, it's genuinely useful. I went on it for the first time a few years ago, and it's honestly pretty great. But the reliability issues have been a real sore spot. There have been tons of breakdowns, shutdowns, and the need for replacement buses that basically defeat the purpose of the LRT, and these breakdowns tend to happen in the winter. Beyond transit, Ottawa is a car city, whether we want to admit it or not. The urban core is pretty bikeable and walkable, but once you're in the suburbs, and most people do end up in the suburbs if they're looking for any kind of space, you're driving basically everywhere. Groceries, kids' activities, anything you want to go do for weekend or evening plans, you're likely going to have to hop in the car, unless you're just kind of sticking around the neighborhood or the bike trails that are in that area. And those commutes can add up. Barhaven, Canada, and Orleans are all 30 to 45 minutes from downtown on a good day. In the winter with icy roads, or if the 417 highway is locked up with traffic, you can be looking at a much longer drive than that. And if you're looking to Gatineau for cheaper housing, the bridge traffic, I can tell you from firsthand experience, is its own special kind of misery. Now, the cycling infrastructure is legitimately good in Ottawa for a Canadian city, and the transit expansion is coming. The LRT is always moving a little further out gradually. But right now, if you're not living close to where you work, getting around is one of the top things that tends to wear people down if they're not expecting it. Another thing that I've heard people regret is Ottawa doesn't end up being as cheap as they thought. Now, yes, the housing is more affordable than a lot of those bigger markets, but more affordable doesn't mean affordable. The average home is still somewhere in the 600s, and anything in a desirable central neighborhood is well above that. A detached home in a really nice central neighborhood like the Glebe or Westboro is not the bargain people imagine when they're comparing to Toronto prices. And then there's the other costs that stack up. Property taxes in Ottawa are higher per dollar of assessed value than places like Toronto. Heating bills can go through the roof 5 months a year while we're dealing with winter. So if you're coming from somewhere in BC and you're not used to paying $250 or $300 a month for heat for November to March, that adds up quickly. Childcare, groceries, insurance, none of it is cheap here. Ottawa is a very comfortable city if your income supports it, but people who move here expecting small town pricing in a capital city will often get a bit of a reality check. None of this means Ottawa is a bad city, not by any stretch. It's a great place to live. I've lived here basically my entire life. It's genuinely one of the best cities in Canada for the right person at the right stage of life. Incredible outdoor access, a strong, stable job market, safe communities, and a quality of life that can be hard to match. But the people who love it the most are the ones who came with their eyes wide open. They picked the right neighborhood for their stage of life. They built a winter routine, and they understood what the commute was going to be like before they signed the offer to their house. They didn't compare Ottawa to the city that they left. They judged it on its own terms.